Hello, people. We're here to discuss another, passage in critical reasoning. You know the drill, right? This is the passage. It's not a very difficult one. There's a reason why I'm picking a few easy ones because we're not here to, really look at complicated, complex passages because that's reading practice. What I want you to understand in these videos, the critical reasoning series, especially, I want you to get your fundamentals right as far as assumptions, inferences, and the rest of the critical reasoning bit correct. Okay, so it's important that the text itself is not very complicated, but you would see how even easy text, such as in some of these videos, will still encounter questions which could be really difficult, because at the end of the day, the difficulty of the critical reasoning questions is not so much about the difficulty of the text or the density of the text. Yes, density adds to the difficulty, but the difficulty of critical reasoning questions has got more to do with your ability to separate out the threads. Okay, this also leads to another important thing about your attempts in the exam, especially in CAT, any time-based exam for that matter. But in CAT especially, I often come across students talking about how they slow down a little bit to improve their accuracy. But that again is a wrong assumption, right? You can see that itself is a good critical reasoning example. The assumption is that if you spend more time on a question, you'll get it right. But that's not true. Okay, there are some questions that you'll notice in your mock cats, any mock cat, and eventually in cat, there will be some questions, no matter how much time you give for those questions, you're not going to get them right. Okay, it's also called the infinite time test. Okay, you can take as much time as you want for some questions, as much time, and without time pressure you solve them. That will tell you whether the mistake you made in the exam was because of the pressure or because the knowledge or the skill set that you need to solve certain questions, you have them or you don't have them. For example, those questions could be dependent on very complex critical reasoning theories, or it could be based on your knowledge of a particular idiomatic expression or a word, or some grammar piece in the passage. These kind of things, you don't, so no amount of time spent on that question is going to get you those 3 marks, which is why it is my sincere request to you to manage your time carefully, and not just throw it away. I mean, don't just lose yourself in spending it's criminal to spend more than 2 minutes on any question. Okay, once you read the passage, 2 minutes is the maximum. Doesn't matter how difficult or easy the question is. If you're not going to get the answer in 2 minutes, you're not going to get the answer right in 3 minutes or even 4 minutes. Okay, so make sure you don't drain too much time. Again, especially in cat. Okay, if in the first 30 seconds you are able to understand what the question is asking you, then only you invest more time on that question. In the first 30 seconds, if you're not able to understand what the question is asking you, there's no point whatsoever for you to spend more time on that question. Okay, in the next 30 seconds, are you able to look at the options and understand the difference between the options? So by the end of about 1.5 minutes, the really good students, or in our case, let's say the 85 to 90 percentiler, the average 80 to 95 percentiler, should be able to figure out two options which are not going to trouble you, and two options which are close. If you're not able to get there in 1.5 minutes, then there's no point spending more time on the question. Okay, it's called the classic gambler's fallacy, where you drained 1.5 minutes on it, so you spend more time on it, or you read the passage for 3 minutes and then you don't want to spend as much time on those questions as possible. Deep inside, this comes down to your fear of reading, nothing else. Okay, that's why I keep insisting that you read a lot. Why? People who don't like reading, or who are doing the reading only for CAT or the GMAT exam and have never done it and don't want to go do it going forward, you think that reading is a transaction. So you read a passage, you force yourself to solve all the questions in that passage, which is a very bad way to go about your exam, especially in CAT, because there you will gain more by leaving out the difficult questions in one passage and reading and spending the same 2-3 minutes on reading another passage, because every passage will have one or two easy questions as well, one very difficult question. So you might as well leave out the difficult question that you have no clue about, save those 2-3 minutes, use the same 3 minutes on reading another passage. If your reading speed is about 150 words, you should be able to read a passage in about 3.5-4 minutes max. So you're using the time you would have wasted on a difficult question on reading a passage, that will open up two easy questions of that passage to you. You can need not do all the 4-5 questions. I don't know how many questions will be there in a passage this year, but you understand the point, right? So it's important for you to manage the time. But if you're scared of reading, you would rather waste your time trying to find the answer of a very difficult question you're definitely not going to get right, instead of going and reading another passage. That fear of reading should go away, which is why read a lot. Okay, how do you read? Again, I come across students telling me how they read, so you allocate about 2 hours of reading a day or 3 hours of reading a day. I mean, you have to be stupid to do something like this. Okay, no offense. It's like watching pirated copies of Marvel movies. I mean, you have to watch them the way you are supposed to watch them, right? In the hall, you whistle and you watch movies and grab a popcorn. That's how you enjoy, right? Same logic here. You do. This is as stupid as that. You do not allocate 2 hours and just sit there and read a newspaper. That's stupid. How you read is forcing your brain to fill in your free time with reading. Okay, your focus time is always for quant and LR, especially for CAT. Again, GMAT, you have the it works a little differently. But if you're CAT aspirant particularly, if you have a chunk of 2 hours or 3 hours, it always belongs to quant or LR. It doesn't belong to verbal. Okay, verbal time is always your wasted time. Okay, that 15 minutes your breakfast time, lunch time, dinner time, you're sitting in the loo instead of WhatsApping or okay, I'm not going to tell you what you should do in your personal time, but see, all that wasted 5 minutes, 10 minutes, that's what you should use for reading. So you randomly open just Aeon and start reading fight, and you have like 6 minutes or 7 minutes, you're standing in the waiting at a bus stop or waiting for the cab. These days you can't, obviously, but if you're outside and you want to go take a walk, sit somewhere in the park or whatever it is, point is that you're reading, you're always reminding your brain that I have to read. It's just 5-minute pockets, because you do not take more than 10 minutes to read any article. I mean, even if it's a long article on Aeon about 3,500, 4,000 words, you probably, at about 150 to 200 words, if you're reading 150 words per minute, it's maximum of 15, 20 minutes. You're not going to take more than that. You're going to drop it in the middle, right? So you get the drift, right? So you fill your day with reading in bits and pieces, because your brain has to get acclimatized to the language. That takes out the fear of reading, because you're reminding your brain all through the day that it has to read. Okay, anyways, so enough GAN about reading on this. So you can pause the video and you can read this particular passage. This is question number 1, this is question number 2, and this is question number 3. Okay, because it's a dead easy passage, these 3 questions put together should not, reading and the 3 questions should not take you, or should not have taken you more than 6 minutes. If it's taking you more than 6 minutes, it means that you are still not doing or not comfortable with critical reasoning. But anyway, we'll look at why you would have probably been uncomfortable, whatever it is. Anyway, in movies, whom you hire is a big part of what you get. And as the saying goes, the best predictor of future performance is prior performance. Okay, so this part is giving you the idea. It's telling you that look at the past performance and it tells you about the future performance of who is getting hired. We still don't know who's getting hired here. Marvel Studios subverts this maxim, or a proverb or a saying. This was the maxim. This is the maxim. Marvel Studios subverts this maxim in a fascinating way. Colon means left hand side, elaboration on the right hand side. What is the elaboration? How does it subvert? When hiring directors, it looks for experience in a domain in which Marvel does not have expertise. Okay, the key here is this particular word. Okay, if you notice, the entire first paragraph hinges on your understanding of just that one word. That's why sometimes you need to read a lot, because these are words you need to know how they are used. Subvert is a negative word. Okay, sub means below the level of something. Vert is to turn. So subvert is changing the current underneath, basically rebelling against something, or revolution against something, or acting against somebody, contrary to somebody. Subvert is always a negative word. So Marvel basically goes against this particular maxim. That's the key. If you understand that, the rest of all the questions become pretty easy. If you don't understand that, then rest of the questions will look a little trickier. So how does Marvel subvert this maximum? How does Marvel go against it? When hiring directors, it looks for experience in a domain in which Marvel does not have expertise. Usually you look at past performance, but Marvel takes people who have got nothing to do with what Marvel is doing, or who have experience with something Marvel doesn't have experience with. So Marvel takes somebody whose work is outside Marvel's area of expertise, something like that. Okay, of the 15 MCU directors, only one had experience with the superhero genre. Who is that person? Joss Whedon had helped write the script for the movie X-Men and had created a critically acclaimed comic book arc for Marvel. So this guy, we can infer here, it's implied, this is the only guy who's the exception of the 15 MCU directors. See, it's also an indirect implication that this guy is one of the MCU directors. Okay, doesn't have to tell us that. Let we understand it. That's what is called an inference. So you know that it is true. You can deduce it from these 2 sentences. That's how inferences work. The author is giving that information to you, but not directly. Hey, look, Joss Whedon was a MCU director. He's an MCU director. The author won't tell you that. It just tells you indirectly, and you still know for sure. Instead, which is a very powerful contrast marker. Instead, so of the 15 MCU directors, only one had experience with the superhero genre. You know who that guy is. Instead, they had deep knowledge in other genres. What are those? Shakespeare, horror, espionage, and comedy. So what is the implication here? What does this sentence imply? These four genres, okay, are outside the purview of this particular genre. That's extra information, right? So basically the author is telling you that, hey, superhero genre is different. Shakespeare, horror, espionage, and comedy are different. Okay, so we can infer that the superhero genre is not a comedy. We can infer that it's not a spy movie. It's not a horror movie. It's not a Shakespearean movie. That's what the author is telling you indirectly. Again, that's how inferences work. They often came from the indie scene. Again, we know that therefore Marvel movies are not indies, because these guys came from indie scene, and these guys are generally picked from areas where Marvel doesn't have expertise. So indie scene and the superhero genre are again separated out. Indie scene and Marvel separated out. See, so many inferences, right? The author's giving you so much information. It's important for you to be good at critical reading, because between every two lines, there is two more lines of hidden information that you have to constantly grasp. This experience allowed them to bring a unique vision and tone to each film. What is a unique vision? Thor: The Dark World, we can infer that, that's a film, has Shakespearean overtones. Ant-Man is a heist film. Okay, if again, this is a vocab test for you. If it's, you have to be able to connect these, different words here and there. Now heist is not exactly espionage, mind you, okay, because we have spy here, which is the exact connection to espionage if you look at it. But what does this part tell us? This part tells us this heist film here is coming from any of these, but it does not belong to the original superhero genre. I know most of you know what is a heist film. I'm pretty sure you watched Money Heist, some of you. Okay, basically looting something and running away. That's how heist works. Captain America: The Winter Soldier is a spy movie. Guardians of the Galaxy is a giddy space opera. This giddy is what gives it away, okay? It's not a serious space opera. Giddy, okay, a little light-hearted. What's more, most of the directors were used to working under tight budgets. Their pre-MCU film budgets were about 1/7 the size of their MCU budgets. So this entire paragraph, if you notice, is just elaboration of this one particular sentence, and this sentence you'll be able to understand only if you understand the word. So basically the entire passage here hinges on your understanding of the word subvert. That's how important vocab can get sometimes. Okay, you know one word, you pretty much understand the whole passage. You don't know that one word, you can't understand the passage, which is why I mentioned earlier that sometimes how much time you spend on a particular question, you getting it right is not a function of that, because if you don't know the meaning of that one particular word somewhere, no matter how much time you spend, you'll not be able to get the answer right. Anyways, look at the questions now. Which of the following pieces of information do not subvert the maxim mentioned in the first part of the passage? Do not subvert, which means we are looking for one that doesn't go against the maxim. Marvel basically subverts the maxim. So whatever Marvel does, okay, whatever Marvel usually does subverts the maxim. Out of the four here, there is one that is something Marvel usually does not do. Clear? That's what we're looking for. Joss Whedon had helped write the script for the movie X-Men. Okay. Thor: The Dark World had Shakespearean overtones. This subverts the maxim, isn't it? We know that straight away because we already inferred that Marvel picked people from other genres, in one of them being Shakespearean, that therefore is outside superhero genre, which means that they subverted the maxim. They went outside their area of expertise. Okay, so this piece of information subverts the maxim. MCU directors often came from the indie scene. Again, we inferred right from the passage that the indie scene and the superhero genre and Marvel movies do not coincide. Therefore, this also subverts. This subvert, basically, we're looking for something Marvel usually does. Right. Most of the MCU directors were used to working under tight budgets. Again, not usual to Marvel, therefore subverts the maxim. Joss Whedon had helped the write script. Again, if you notice, these are not new pieces of information. These are all pieces of information picked from the passage. So the question basically is, in the passage, which of these is not given to tell you that Marvel subverts the maxim? So BCD to tell you that Marvel subverts maximum. If you notice, this piece of information was given to us as an exception to the rule. Only this guy had prior experience in it. So the answer to this particular question is option. This is easy. Okay, you're not supposed to be getting this wrong. You just have to know that this is the exception. If you're reading it, all it says only one had experience, right? You know that this is the only exception to the above sentence. You got that, you'll get this particular question wrong. So if you got this question wrong, I'm a little disappointed. I'll be a little disappointed with you. Don't worry, it's okay. I mean, not the end of the world, but See, here's the thing. You need to use common sense. You need to be present and read what you're reading properly. Okay. Not, sometimes you don't need to overthink. You just read and understand. It's just, see, this particular passage in the questions are picked basically to see if you can understand from the tone. Oftentimes you understand the tone of the passage well, you can answer the question. So you don't have to go to intricacies. Anyway, so let's look at the second question. It cannot be inferred from the passage. Okay. Here we have only a couple of paragraphs, so it's fine. But in your mocks or actual cat, beware of a question like this. Cannot be inferred from the passage. 500-word passage, how many places will you check? Okay, this question is always going to be time consuming. So look for inference questions where the location has been given, para 1, para 2, para 3, or whatever it is. That is a question you can do. If they, or look for a question where the keyword is present in the question. The keywords present in the question, you have something to search for. It cannot be inferred from the passage. You have to read the 4 options, understand the 4 options, remember which part of the passage this option is, talking about, then go and check if it is true or false. This is typical 99 percentiles question. Okay, it's, if you're someone who's looking to only clear the cutoff, you look at this question, read the options. If you want, it takes you about 15-20 seconds max. You can understand the options very clearly, great. Can't, just move away. Please don't waste 3 minutes on a question like this and get it wrong invariably. Okay, it can. Plus, look at this. It cannot be inferred from the passage, that, which means that out of 4, 3 can be inferred from the passage, which means 3 of these 4 sentences are true, but you will not find them in the passage, but you have to still understand them from the passage. It's going to get really difficult. Right. In this case, the passage is easy and you just have 2 paras, so it's cool. But in a bigger passage, beware of this particular question. Anyway, it cannot be inferred from the passage that X-Men belonged to the superhero genre. Can we infer it? Can we not infer it? Marvel movies didn't belong to the indie scene. Directors who made indie movies have a unique vision. Prior to Captain America, Winter Soldier, Marvel handmade espionage movies. Okay, start with bottom. Okay. You can infer this, right? Why can you infer this? Because we saw it here, right? We know that the author is telling us that every time they pick a director with something Marvel doesn't have expertise with, and therefore they bring their unique vision or tone to each film, and therefore you get these movies. So Captain America is the Winter Soldier is a spy movie. So the guy who made this movie probably had experience with it, but Marvel had never made such a movie because it tells us, right, it is outside Marvel does not have expertise with it. So we know that this is the first spy movie, had made espionage movies, right? So this is out. It can be inferred. Directors who made indie movies have a unique vision. Again, you go back, you know where it's coming from, right? What does it tell you here? It tells you here that they often came from the indie scene. This experience allowed them to bring a unique vision and tone to each film. So to bring a unique vision and tone to each film, they bring a unique vision to this film. Okay, so they bring something that they have from that experience to this particular film. Unique vision, who's unique here? The vision is unique, and the vision is unique not of this particular person. The vision that they bring from there to there, from point A to point B, that vision is unique. Doesn't mean that anybody who directs an indie movie has a unique vision. You understand the difference? What does this option say here? Directors who made indie movies have a unique vision? No. Directors who made indie movies can bring a unique vision to the Marvel movies. Okay, so you understand the difference, right? So I cannot say that anybody who made an indie movie had a unique vision. It's not about the person. It's about what the person brings to the table for a Marvel movie particularly. You will understand this if I give you another example. Okay, so let's say if C were true, directors who made indie movies have a unique vision. I make indie movie A, okay, and then I make indie movie B, and then I make indie movie C. Do they have a unique vision in each of these movies? We don't know, isn't it? So what was the author trying to tell you there? The author is trying to tell you somebody made an indie movie A, and now suddenly that fellow is making a Marvel movie. That experience of an indie movie will become unique to the Marvel movie. That experience of the indie movie A may not be unique for indie movie B. Clear? So it's not about the director having a unique vision. It's about what the director brings from there to here. So the pairing is important. Unique vision only when a person moves from A to B, A being an indie movie, B being a Marvel movie. And that's how important it is. So can this be inferred? No, it can't be inferred. Marvel movies didn't belong to the indie scene. Yes, because Marvel picks people out of their area of expertise, and they're picking directors of, indie directors. Indie, by the way, means that, that low budget thing which people make with scant resources, something that goes a little under the radar, not heavily promoted. That kind of scene is called indie. You have indie music, indie movies, and all of that. Marvel movies didn't. You don't need to know the meaning, by the way. Okay, for this question, you don't need to. For the passage, you don't need to. Whatever, there's some word indie is used, and that word's outside Marvel's area of expertise. So it can be inferred that Marvel movies didn't belong to the indie scene. That's why it's outside the area of expertise, right? X-Men belong to the superhero genre. It was given as an exception. If it's given as an exception, it means that X-Men belong to the superhero genre. Okay, so can be inferred. So the answer to this particular question is this one. See, isn't it? Directors who made indie movies have a unique vision. We cannot infer that from the passage, right? Let's look at the next question. Which of the following choices will be consistent with Marvel's subversion of the maxim mentioned in the first para of the passage? If you notice, you're seeing new directors' names. This is what you call a further application question. Further application question means that the information is new. To check whether you understood the passage properly or not, we give you new examples. We give you new examples, and then you try to apply the theory of the passage into these new examples and figure out. So it has to be consistent with Marvel's subversion of the maxim mentioned in the first part of the passage, which means that you have to pick something that Marvel does according to the passage, which is Marvel is basically picking someone as a director who has not previously had any experience with the superhero genre. Right? That's how Marvel subverts the maxim mentioned in the passage. So we're looking for that kind of situation. Marvel hires acclaimed director Christopher Nolan, who has never worked with Marvel but has made superhero movies in the past. This guy has experience, isn't it? From the passage, we know that they generally pick people who do not have experience, except that exception, they generally pick. So this consistent to the Marvel subversion of the maxim? No, it's not. Okay, it's awesome. It will be if Marvel brings Nolan, isn't it? Marvel convinces Martin Scorsese, even better, known for his gangster movies and hated for the superhero genre, to direct its next superhero movie. So if they're bringing somebody who's known for something else to direct their superhero movie. Done. So this is typical of Marvel. Bring somebody who's outside that particular area and ask that person to do something for them. Superhero movie. Marvel brings Bong Joon-ho, known for directing black comedies, on board. Oscar Award winner. I'm pretty sure if you're keeping. We made one more video where we spoke about Parasite anyway. To write a comic book arc for its next superhero black comedy. Okay. If you picked C, okay, you have to just slap yourself. And I'll be really pissed off if you actually if you're somebody who picked C, because it just means you're not even reading the option carefully. Okay, what is it that is given here? It's to write a comic book arc. Write a comic book arc versus direct a movie. Now you might ask, how do I know that? Okay, when hiring directors, it clearly says. So if you picked C, you should be very upset with yourself. I mean, even I'll be upset with you, because you're supposed to be reading options carefully. Okay, so this is the easiest of all options to eliminate. Marvel brings this guy to write a comic book arc for his next superhero black body. I don't need to care about it because you're only looking for directions. Marvel hires David Fincher, who directs psychological thrillers, again some other genre, to make its first non-superhero genre movie. So yes, they're getting somebody outside their area of expertise. Yes, they're making a movie. They're asking this guy to make a movie. So far, so good. So that's why these two are the two close options. But this is the clue. It's first non-superhero genre movie. So Marvel's usual way, modus operandi. How do they subvert the maxim? They get somebody who's outside their area of expertise, and then they ask that guy to make this their movie. But here they're not asking this guy to make their movie. They're asking that guy to make whatever movie he wants to make. So it's like Marvel producing an indie movie, or Marvel producing a normal spy movie, not a superhero genre movie. Okay, D is like that. Therefore, D is not consistent. D is not consistent with respect to what the author meant in the first para about Marvel's subversion of the maxim. Okay, so the answer to this particular question will be option B. Okay, that brings us to the end of this particular video. Hope you had fun. Hope you liked the movie. Watched a lot of movies, but the idea is to, if you got a question wrong, okay, there are two mistakes you make every time you get a question wrong, isn't it? Mistake number one is that there was something wrong in the option that you picked and you did not spot it. Okay, and you eliminated another option which was right by assuming something's there that doesn't exist. Two mistakes you always make. So from every wrong answer, you always learn two things, not one, if you're doing the right analysis. Okay, so make sure you do that, because I mentioned for each option, right, what is right and what is wrong about it. So you should be able to sit and figure out why you did not catch whatever I am telling you is the wrong one. Try to patch up that place. Okay, until next time, peace out.